I'm Holloway-Smith, poet, and I work in the School of Humanities as a creative writing lecturer. And as Melissa said today, we're going to have a short reading by a couple of our university slam team poets. It was their first year this year that they entered, so we're all feeling proud of them. And then we're going to have a slightly longer reading and from Inua Ellams, and he and I will have a little bit of a chat afterwards. And the chat box is open for anyone that wants to make a comment during any of the readings. I know that that's a thing that people like to do on these online events. It's very difficult, actually. I don't know if you find this, Inua, but when I'm reading on these things, I've got half an eye on what people are typing into that box when I'm reading. All the emojis coming up is a little bit like, oh my God. It's actually a little bit harder to concentrate than in an event where everyone is in the same room, right? Because you can people aren't hiding their expressions. They're literally representing them through emoji. We're gonna open that box so people can also ask questions to Inua, and I will field those questions alongside a couple that the UH Arts team wanted me to ask. So without any more delay or me speaking in a relatively monotonous way, I'm going to hand over to Chloe, who's going to give us a reading first, and then straight to Alex. Over to you, Chloe. Welcome to this event.
Hello everyone, sorry. My name is Chloe and I am a first year student and I helped bring our poetry team into the Uni Slam competition this year, which was very exciting and a great honour to take part in. This is my poem. It is called What It Is to Be Evicted. I was 17 when the blindfold fell. I sank to the floor, the room spun to black. Our planet is stitched with the fabric of reality, but some are left with holes they patch with scraps of love and hope and sacrifice. I am unimportant, told time and time again I was not good enough. The invisible barrier splitting our world between chosen and forgotten is sewn with a golden thread of wealth and luck. Across the atmosphere of their gifted sanctuary, while ours is tapered with thin string ready to split with one sharp tug. Eviction is a crisis that shapes and contorts, a force against what we know and of what is sure. Finding a home in a world sown with class, I realized how much I have to work hard, to defy expectations and fight for a chance to live in a country run by its past. Thank you.
Good job, Chloe. Alex, over to you. I'm really looking forward to hearing you. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Sure. Have you seen this wall sweating? Have you seen the skies crying? Wine and vinegar on the pavement. July helps to deliver premature spring baby. How would you define violence, my dear friend of an empty faith? When justice is vomiting blood. When you cannot tell parade from funeral. When torture is an elegant entertainment. When kids paint rainbows with ashes of civilization. When bullet inside your lung becomes a jewelry. When the truth is on a sale in a local store. Roar of artificial happiness dehydrates your soul. So you tell me that you're existentialist. You tell me that you're existentialist thirsty for a life goal. And you tell me that you've seen 7 wonders. And you were present when babies were born, already drunk with mother's nuclear milk. And you saw a new generation of people, burying commercial people in a coffin made of silk. So where have you been? Where have you been? Where have you been? An only quiet voice responded, God is near, and I'm here.
Good job, team. It's really heartening and lovely to see two young writers from the first year who haven't even studied a poetry module at the university yet, like sort of taking down and pushing themselves forward.
Jaquisha is now on the chat too, Wayne.
Oh yeah, can we have Chiquita,
Yeah,
Melissa?
hi, this is Jigisha. I'm a first year film student. My poem name is The Peace of Night. I am your soulful tag, and you are my blistering moon. Give you the sunshine of the armor, I am a happy fool. I give you the love of dusk and daunting of dawn, feeling like a bee in the garden of husking brown, walking barefoot on the cold grass, holding your hand. I was the queen of the world, for your lips were on mine. The eyes of darkness giving me sorrow tears, but the golden eye you showed me remained forever. Thank you.
Thanks, Chiquita. Yeah, so as I was saying, it's so heartening to see a bunch of really young writers coming up and sort of just taking it to the scene, like straight away without like I didn't really have to encourage any of these people. They were just straight in, pretty much took on the sort of slam, the uni slam competition, without anyone having to push them forward or ask them to do it. It's been really impressive. I look forward to teaching you uh, next year. So we're going to move on to the featured reader, I guess, as we're often called, aren't we? And you're like, there's an open mic, and then and then like
Feature, yeah.
they describe you as the featured reader, and that adds the slightly additional pressure to having already to speak in front of everyone. Of course, Inua, you sort of came up through the spoken word scene a little bit initially, didn't you? And like the first time I heard you spoken about, it was by a poet that we both knew called Roddy Lumsden, who I was in like a beginner's poetry class, and he just kept going on about this guy called Inua Ellams, who was like 19 and just incredibly impressive and talented. And everyone in the class was, do you know that bit where they're a little bit like, oh, that's really cool, but also, why doesn't he speak about me like that in front of other people? So we finally met, and we ran a live event together for a couple of years called Young
Yeah,
Blood.
Young Blood, yeah.
Yeah.
New Blood.
New Blood. Oh God, see, I don't even know the name. So long ago. And then our kind of paths have consistently intersected since then, but we don't meet that often in person, do we? Like maybe
No.
accidentally at a bus stop, or when you're walking past a cafe that I run out and grab you and
Yeah,
drag you into a little bit.
when I used to live in Brixton, yeah.
So how are you?
I'm okay. Today I walked to meet my mother in Peckham. I try to walk for an hour every day just to make sure I don't develop a belly. And I walked an hour there and I met her and I walked an hour back. So that's what I've done today. I was interviewed by a teacher in Ireland because my play, The 14th Tale, is now on the syllabus. And he just wanted to discuss it and know how to speak to other teachers to encourage them to teach with the play. And what else have I done today? Done some admin. That's it, really.
So admin is a big part of our lives.
It really is.
Later on, one of the questions is about top 3 tips for young poets people that want to be poets. And I suppose one of the focuses of your answer will have to be admin related, won't it? In your invoice related, email related, etc. So just for people that are tuning in, like Inua is like a consistently successful writer, performer, poet, and all-round kind of upstanding citizen. Like it's a pleasure to kind of have been a friend with him over a few years, and this year I was given the opportunity to make Inua the poetry fellow for the University of Hertfordshire. I've been sort of like allowed to set up what's called the Poetry Hub for the School of Creative Writing. And over that period, we've had poets such as Rachel Long, who's suddenly just burst onto the scene and is really cleaning up with her debut collection. Had Mark Waldron and Jane Yeh as well. And Inua is the latest sort of installment, and we have him for this year and next year. Of course, like people that are familiar with Inua's work will know that he's not only a poet and whose debut collection is out this year called The Actual with Penned in the Margins, but you've had a significant amount of publication experience before that, haven't you, Inua? And on top of that, you're kind of like taking the, I think it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say taking the world by storm with a bunch of really successful plays, one of which is now on the syllabus, teaching syllabus in schools in Ireland. So what I thought would be good to get you to do today would be to read, well, you can read, I'm happy for you to read anything new or anything that really stands out, but we'd really like to hear some more work from The Actual as well, which has got a bit of a buzz around it at the moment. And I think it's always, some of your poems have been taught this year on a number of my modules, but it'd be really nice to hear you read live and hear them in your own words.
Thank you. How long do you think I should read for, Wayne?
Why don't you read 6 poems at least initially, and just tell us anything that you want to tell us, like in between or whatever. Just do as you would do for any live reading, and then we can have a bit of a chat.
Okay, well, for live readings, I tend not to decide what to read, and I let the listeners, the audience, decide. And I'm going to ask you guys to decide by giving me a word and typing it into the search function. And I'll type it into the search function on my iPad and read poems that contain that word. So let's do it that way. So yeah, give me a word, type it into the chat box, please. Okay, Susanna even says energy, ENERGY. No, I don't have a poem with that word. So this is where it gets interesting.
Ashley's got love, Inua. That's the first one that came up.
Oh, love was the first one. Susanna, if you think for synonym for energy, we'll come back to you. So let's see, love. Yes, there are lots of poems with love in The Actual, actually. Let me see. Let me read. I'll read the first poem. It's called, the last poem is called Fuck You, but it contains the word love in it. Fuck you. My love, I promised, should you ever say you're not a body that has a soul, but a soul that has a body, and that body is within the soul, I'd respond, fuck you, and fuck out of here with that new age shit. But I haven't, because early this week, crawling between the crisp sheets for an afternoon nap, I fell back, expecting the goose feather pillow to gather my loose neck, but instead kept falling as if the feathers had parted into the smoothest clouds, then just forming snow, then hard rain, then red mist, then fire, raging fire, then molten stone, oh boiling earth, oh liquid metal, oh solid thunder, oh fire, all fury through which I kept tumbling, then all went silent, as if I'd falling off the cliff edge of quiet into space, all blue, all black, all blinking its many-mooned and million mysteries, all of them ministering to me. And amongst them was I drifting at the slowest speed possible, yet far above, out and wide as the planet's girth, all expanding, all still, all me still there in that bed, moon wrecked between its sheets, gasping and grasping at it. For all the fleshy sparkle of the body's glow, for all its muscular mystery, how could it contain all I had seen, all I had been, unless its reach is beyond itself, further than its bones allow, unless the soul is beyond its body, its edges blurring to brilliant madness.
Nice one, Inua. Just to interrupt the flow there, the person that asked for love has typed into the box, "It's my birthday" poem. So I think we should take a moment to wish Ashley happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Ashley.
All right.
And poem was a prize for you. Okay, so Susanna, should we go to Susanna? Do you have a synonym for energy? Or would you like to recommend one? You'd like to give one, Wayne?
Well, I reckon Leanne's got wonder, and that is
Wonder.
I definitely would associate wonder with your work.
Yeah,
There's a
there are 4
wide-eyedness,
poems.
a bewilderment to a lot of the things that, it's like an explorative mode that you write in, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that's sort of like walking down a dark road and looking for lights that are flickering in houses and trying to look through them and construct stories from them is definitely one of the ways in which I try to write. But there are 4 poems which contain the word wonder. Let me see, and I think I will read. There are 2. Let me see. I think I'll read "Fuck the Mandela Effect." Yeah, the Mandela Effect. Well, it's explanatory in the first line of the poem, but this is called "Fuck." So there's a premise that guides all the poems in the actual, which is all the titles begin with the word "fuck." Yeah, so this is the 3rd or 4th poem called "Fuck the Mandela Effect." Noun: definition, confabulation, collective misremembering of events or details, named after an imprisoned African activist, thought deceased in the mid-80s, who when released later, led his nation. Tell me how it is possible to forget a country-sized man, how one misremembers mountains breathing. Black men are killed so often it's assumed we've already passed. Whole white worlds imagine us in coffins, our skin the color of stained wood. No wonder police have skittish fingers. How else would you react to a corpse walking? Wouldn't you think yourself seeing things? Perhaps the wicked metal of a gun, a knife's simmering silver smile, even our empty palms open, our fingers play like an asterisk to draw attention to our humanity, our Black lives still mattering. Let them call us nigger. We can reclaim such cruel breath in verse. Let them raise our villages to dust. We will sculpt the mud to houses. Let them burn our sugarcane fields. We're already part molasses. To be Black is to constantly achieve the improbable, to drive unchallenged to your own neighborhood, to return home safe with sweets, to keep your name intact, to be safe, jogging, to breathe, to breathe, to breathe. But some miracles are better left performed once. Dear God of language and narrative, haven't sent back your patched up son, Black, holy and bruised. Restrict some of that which you have given. Some folks are too loose with words. Don't let them call us dead. The second poem. Thank you. So the Mandela Effect is actually named after that phenomenon, collective misremembering. And when I discovered that, this poem just kind of came forth and grew and grew and grew. Yeah. Shantae gave the word sorrow, SORROW. Yeah, I have a poem. This is a short one. I've been commissioned by the Manchester International Festival to create a visual interpretation companion piece to this poem. I also work as a visual artist and as graphic designer. For instance, this is one of my illustrations on the cover of my first collection of plays. So this is gonna be screen printed onto billboards across Manchester in mid-July. And this is a poem called Fuck Concrete. And the last word of this is sorrow. So thank you, Shantae. The bus will ride through the city. The rain clouds will gather. The trials of urban light will fail. Water will claim victory. The valleys we have sculpted, the hills we have built, the tall, lean structures, all will shift. The sediment of who we once were, the haggard seeds we have been, the hidden, downtrodden parts which turn on mulch beneath will break through our stone facades. And should we sigh at what surfaces and think, this bitter earth, what fruit it bears, let us rejoice that there is feast, such bountiful sorrow. Thank you, Shante. Let me see. Who's next? Oh, I think that's it. I think we've run out of words.
So let me throw a couple of words at you that are
Okay.
synonyms for energy.
Okay.
Power,
Power.
life, vibrancy.
Okay. Yes, I do have a few poems with power actually. Let me see. Yeah, I'm gonna. This is the last poem I wrote in the collection, and I wrote this yeah, just before I submitted it in the first month of lockdown last year. It's called Fuck Batman, and it's about the pandemic. And this the seed of this was that it is believed the coronavirus originated in animal markets in Wuhan amongst bats and pangolins between those. So this is it. Fuck Batman. The promise was, should one fall into a cave of bats, should one be engulfed by hundreds of beating wings, should one be beaten, scratched, or bitten, one would emerge half human, half invincible enough to sharpen fear down to a tight-toothed weapon with which to gnaw the criminal urban underworld down to pulpy nothings, protecting us all. The promise was, should an animal's essence seep into a child, knowing what damage loose power brews, he would accept himself as host, his body a fleshy petri dish to guide its mutation to goodness. Instead, the promise turned ravenous, leapt from host to host, country to country, blood to blood, its million teeth chewing through our simple lungs. We closed down our offices, it hung on our clothes. We fled from cities, it clung to our cars. We stayed in bed, it came for our dreams. A curdled crown, a rank coronation, a crude corroding of our inner sanctums, our public spaces, our minute planning, our mapped out futures, the horoscopes and forecasts, the dark parts of star charts, all emptied out to insidious stillness, the promise gorging on our numbed lives, our startled terror. And when the promise retreated, it left its fangs in the skies, its claws in our pockets, its foul breath huffed between us in shopping lines, its warning to return, should we seize vigilance to claim more from the survived.
We've got a few more now, Inua.
Okay,
Fear, trust, and hope.
okay. Let me try fear from Chloe. Fear. Yeah. I wrote a play called Barbershop Chronicles a few years ago. And this poem, one of the few narrative poems in the book, is taken from a scene that was cut out of the final play. And this is based on a conversation I had in Kenya. And it's called Fuck Carrots. So thanks, Chloe. This is for you. Friday night, barbershop, it's starting again. Samuel, his hand poised over Ethan's head, is Basquiat before an uncrowned king, is Henry Moore before a block of wood, is Sigmund Freud before a mass of contradictions. Clippers, paintbrush, chisel, voice, the task is the same, to bring to light what lies within. The shop is stock full of us, our skin, all the tints and tones of wood, our heads of wild foliage. Kwame, just taxied from Saudi Arabia, slides off his cap, says his driver was a woman, how progressive London is compared to Saudi, which banned them from driving. Why, Ethan asks, wide-eyed beneath Samuel, because, Kwame says, fear of infidelity. They even ban courgettes. Cucumbers are illegal. Emmanuel, who knows where this is going, he who owns the shop, who's heard all types of talk, sighs into his client's head. Why, Ethan asks, because of self-pleasure. Winston cackles from the center of the shop. Because of vegetables, they won't need a man. What about carrots? Asks Uncle Sizwe. Ah, too pointy, Kwame responds. But you can carve them, pipes Muhammad from the back. They can be huge. Yes, size matters. And the tides of conversations swell among the men. Some, as if captains, sway in their seats. Others stand up, out on a limb, begging for the sanity and sanctity of sex, covering their sons' ears, visible in the ridicule. A passerby peeking, I wonder what it is. If something's in the water, some loosening opiate, a dark tonic, black juice we have drunk. What magic is this welding of loose-necked Pinocchios, gym freaks, thin-limbed, immigrants, emigrants, fantastic fools, fathers, sons, rulers, and the ruled, loud in our laughter, silent in our suffering. What is this binding? What is set free? All I know is Ethan's cut is clean. Samuel released what lay within. His mass trimmed, the wood gleamed, and though he's one of us, now he's crowned king. That's it. Thank you, Chloe, for fear. Do you think it's time for one more? Or should we?
Let's do one more. So you've got Faye or Annabelle. You've got so trust or hope, and this isn't Faye or Annabelle. Whichever one Inua chooses, it's not some kind of indictment on the value of the other one. You guys have never met Inua.
Okay. Trust. Do you have a synonym for trust?
Do I have a synonym for trust?
Yeah, because I don't have one. Yeah, I don't have a poem with that.
That's interesting.
Or Faye, do you have trust?
Shantae's jumped in belief. Faye's slid in with faith.
Okay. Let me go with faith as it was Faye's suggest. Okay. I have faithful, Faye. Would you accept that? Is that close enough?
Faye's an amenable sort of guy. I know he's going to accept that. Sounds good.
Okay, all right. Okay, thanks, Faye. This is it. This poem is called Fuck Humanity. Fuck humanity, I want to bellow like a card-carrying champion of the nihilist society. Fuck all the ways, even our most earnest, faithful, folded over, humbled, deep down considered attempt at amending our venomous ills undoes itself. Think almond milk and California wildfires, nitrogen fertilizer and industrial food waste, factory emission limits and the trade in carbon offsets, free market and exploitation, voluntary work and white savior complex, vegan avocado diets and deforestation, phones to connect our lonely spirits and black bodies in coltan mines. Fuck every single attempt. Our best bet is to annihilate our vicious selves. I want to bellow as Ellie pushes a 3-year-old hand into the calloused cave of mine. Her fingers, frail as elderberry petals, flutter. She calls me down to the careful constellations blooming in the brown universe of her brimming eyes, and all I am folds over, humbled, deep down, reconsider attempt at amending our venomous ills, even if it undoes me.
Thanks so much, Inua. I'm sure that if we were in a room right now, people would be clapping, etc. But it's a kind of strange one, isn't it, to finish reading? I mean, it's weird because if you do the like big readings, like where you're on a stage at like a poetry event, often after you finished reading, people don't make a noise anyway. Sometimes you get one of those like, But like at some of the events, this is what's so refreshing. I guess we'll come maybe some events that you run, for example, Rap Party, are some of the more interesting events that I personally have read at, because people don't even wait for you to finish before they start whooping and clapping. Like it's quite a stark contrast, isn't it? It literally does feel like a party, like irrespective of the fact that someone's reading poetry. And that I feel like is something that tips over into the way that you read, the way that you write and perform in general, there is a level of high energy and engagement there. Would you say like that was one of the first things that you is that one of the driving factors to your kind of artistic output, do you think? The idea of drawing an audience in?
Definitely. I think I came to really champion and love literature and the performance aspect of this through hip hop, which is all about braggadocio. It's all about commanding the presence, commanding stage presence, hooking an audience in, making them finish a song almost in time with you, rapping back to you. So that element of democratizing language really underpins my approach to creating text. I'm from Nigeria, West Africa, where there's a strong oral storytelling tradition, where storytellers believe that if they don't tell a story well, their audience will take the story from them and tell it amongst themselves, because sometimes the stories are well known and the sharing is a confirmation of their cultural identity. So that attempt to create, that's almost a socialist communist attempt way of looking at the creation of text, is one that really underpins the way that I write. I also and it also informs my editing process. There's something Stephen King says, which I really champion. He says, you write with the door closed, but rewrite with the door open. And when I'm editing poems, that is at the forefront, is one of my guiding principles. I imagine if a Mongolian goat herd were to wander into my flat and sit beside me, have I created space for him to understand my stories, to understand my poems? What else can I do to hold his attention? What room is there for his identities to meet mine? Is the language too cloaked? Is it too dense? What do I include, or who do I include or exclude by doing that? So that is really at the forefront of my mind when I'm editing.
That's so interesting. And kind of like why, I was quite verbal in the run up to them choosing the recent poet laureate, where I was like, let's
Yeah.
just forget it and just make Inu a poet laureate. He basically does it anyway. Like, how do you think then there's like a crossover? Because we've spoken before about your plays, and you kind of spoke about to me how your plays started off as failed poems.
Yeah.
But then what was really interesting today is you read a poem that didn't make it into the last scene of one of your plays. So there's this interesting dialogue going on there. Talk to us a little bit about the transitional conversation between your poems and plays.
Yeah, they're always in conversation with each other. Because poetry is actually my second form of expression. The first was the visual arts, but poetry is easier to begin to write a poem than it is to try and create and finish a painting or something. So because I came to literature that way, and I came to writing poetry that way. I really I really, that is where I go to begin a story, to begin an idea. I try to explore it as poetry. But now and then the idea isn't serviced by one poem. It needs a sequence of poems or a family of poems. And now and then those poems become whole beings that are embodied in my imagination, who I'm in debate with. And then it becomes a play or a television series. But usually everything begins an attempt to write poetry, and then it escalates. But even within my plays, there are bits of monologues which are free verse poems. They're structured as sonnets sometimes, or I write plays that are just sequences of poems stitched together, or I have full poems. For instance, I'm working on a radical new version of Antigone set in contemporary day London, but all the Greek chorus are essentially poets in poetry venues scattered across present day London, reading poems that advance the story and tell us what has happened at certain moments within the duration of the play. So poems are laced through everything. They feed my work and they give birth to new work. And sometimes some of my plays are best contextualized by reading poems that I was writing at the same time. So they kind of feed each other constantly. it's a relay race sometimes between my poems, between plays and sequences and everything. It's like that.
That's so, yeah, cheers. So I've got a couple of questions from school here, which kind of relate to that. So was it always an ambition then to have your work on stage, like, you know, because I know basically you're always on stage in terms of a performer of poetry anyway. So
Yeah,
what was it like to move from, was it like ambition or a conscious move to like produce your first play or stage your first
no,
play?
it was entirely accidental. I was invited to Glastonbury around 2007, 2008 to read poems. And this was when the work that I was creating was becoming more intricate, more dense, which just required audiences to pay attention. And I was in Glastonbury where that shit was not happening. You know, it was horrible. I was in this tent full of adults who were drunk and high at the same time. There were thunderstorms and rain, and the audience just weren't interested in the things that I had to say on stage. So when I returned to London, I began looking for venues in which audiences would come just to sit down and listen to intricately written stories or text. And that's when I moved into writing, into working and performing in theaters. And the more I did so, the bigger stories came to me, and the bigger theaters, the bigger theaters approached me asking me for work, and I began to write work for actors. So these days, I think in terms of my performance is reserved only for sharing poetry, but mostly I'm writing plays that are for much larger casts, that epic stories that
So because
require
you,
trained performers.
because a few of your performances were like basically just you, wasn't it? Like on
Yeah,
stage telling stories, and then all of a sudden, like it, like from the outside, from my perspective, you jump to like barbershop chronicles and that quite. That's like a big leap almost. I remember walking across the bridge. Like you say, we only talk, you know, every so often, really. And
yeah.
I remember walking across Waterloo Bridge, and there's that outside the National Theatre. It says like Tempest by William Shakespeare, uh, Inua Ellams, and then Bertolt Brecht. And I just took a picture of it and sent it to you with a question mark. Like, were you going to let us know that you were just suddenly at the National Theatre?
Yeah, that was one of the craziest moments in my life, and it's happened 4 times because I've had 4 plays at the National Theatre since. But that very first moment was wild, given how much I respected Shakespeare's work. I mean, half the world does, but also The Tempest, particularly, because I loved that play and hated in equal measure because it made me distrust Shakespeare as a champion of of humanity as an empath, because of how he treated Caliban. There's a play I'm going to write someday, called When Caliban Met Othello, where those two characters, those two people of color in his work, meet and discuss Shakespeare. But I remember seeing The Tempest and seeing my name, thinking this is the funniest shit ever, and yeah, just wanting to capture it to tell my kids when I have them, if I have them. Yeah.
That's yeah. That's a really interesting idea. Like two
Yeah.
characters sort of just taking some time out to discuss their author.
Yeah.
Just before, like, because we've only got a few minutes left, I'm just gonna ask if anyone that's watching has got a question. You can just type it into the chat. Ashley said that you. Oh, I should have read this ages ago. But Ashley says about something that you're really right. That I come from New Zealand, and this work, anyway,
Mm.
your words is a cultural compass for me living here. That must be nice to hear, right?
That's really nice to hear, Ashley. Thank you so much. And talk about New Zealanders. One of my favorites of all the Marvel movies is Thor Ragnarok. And this is because Taiki Waititi, the director, took the Marvel sort of the huge epic stories there and really localized it. His version is entirely about colonization, and it's about reparations. And it's just so incredible to understand an artist who's working at his level, taking something as canonical as Thor as the Marvel comics, and just doing what he wants with it. It's incredible. It's inspirational to see it through that lens, and how much guts he had to do so. It's incredible.
That's interesting. Just a very quick question from Chloe. Why do you say you write your plays from failed poems and not the successful ones?
Because the successful one stays as poems. I don't have to do anything with them. When I finished it, I finished it, and it's there. It's in the family of poems. It might be published in a book, etc. And even failed poems that don't become plays, I strip them for spare parts. If they're great lines, I take them, I recycle them, I give them to characters to say in plays, or just use them as kindling for other poems. So even my failed poems are just in a progression towards something else.
Yeah, that's such a positive way of looking at it as well, isn't it? Because that way you never feel all down in the dumps after you don't feel like you've wasted a day, do you? You're just like, right, well, I know that I've written a couple of dope things that I can definitely appropriate for other means at
Yeah.
a later time. So last question then, Inua, is, and this is from the University of Humanities Arts, is do you have top, this is actually putting you on the spot really, but do you have 3 top tips for students that might want to become poets and perhaps make a living from it?
3 top tips. One is have fun. Have fun, because no one really gives a fuck but you. Excuse me, well, I've been swearing all day. So yeah, no one really gives a fuck but you. Have fun. Write about things you care about in the ways you want to care about them. Look for, write into holes, things that you don't think exist that should exist. Write those poems. Don't spend your time trying to sound like anyone else, because if people want poems by anyone else, they just go to those people. If I want to read Shakespeare sonnets, I'll go to Shakespeare. I'm not going to come to you writing poems that sound like Shakespeare. So try and find ways to sound like yourself and protect that. All the weird things you dig, the weird like 70s cartoons, those little weird references, things that make you feel you, guard them, treasure them. Yeah, so I'd say that's the first thing. Second thing is try and look for poetry communities or collectives around you that you can join, people who are roughly about around your age, who are writing similarly, who can, or who you understand can understand you, and think of them as first readers for your poems. Let them critique you, you critique their work, and in doing so, you understand what is good, things that you're good at, and things you're not so good at, and find these safe spaces to share text. I was privileged to be a member of many collectives when I first started out writing. A lot of them became lifelong mentors, so I still go to. So find pockets, find safe spaces to create work. And the third is, let me see, read poems from across the world, because literature serves various functions and other functions in other parts of the world. Here in the UK, we're obsessed with individuality of possession, where poets, sit in the dark for hours and bring something singular and true from the light, and they're heralded and put in this sort of pyramidic structure where they are above and blah, blah, blah. And poetry just doesn't work that way. I've talked about the West African cultures around oral storytelling, where it's communal. In parts of Persia, for instance, no one is fussed with trying to be original. They're just trying to emphasize and to build and sort of intertextual lexicon, which everyone works from and riffs from. In parts of Latin America, to be a poet is to be a politician, is to be a community activist, a community leader, where if you write a shit poem, people stop you and say, the last poem you wrote was crap, it doesn't represent me, go back and do better. So really consider various attempts to writing poetry, various starting points, and see how that meets you. And when you do so, you just become a better writer, a more aware, culturally aware and globally aware writer, which means that you create very different work. But if you stay with that first principle, however diverse and wide the work is, it's still going to come from you. You just find other ways to be.
Thanks so much, Inua. I'm sure everyone will thank you in the chat box. It's really good to speak to you and see you on screen again. We should meet up soon.
Thanks for having
Thanks
me.
everyone for coming. I'll hand back to Melissa to sort of wrap the event up, and really appreciate everyone's time.
Thanks everyone. That was brilliant. I think we could all listen to you guys chat for a lot longer. Thanks for taking the time to do that for us, Inua and Wayne, and for everyone for coming. As I said, it's recorded. It will be hosted on the UH Arts website. We will be emailing everyone an evaluation form. It just helps UH Arts provide content that you guys find helpful. More like this, hopefully. But thanks everyone for coming, and hopefully see you again at another one of our events.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Wayne. Thanks for coming.
See you later.